Competing against cash could actually be hurting your chances of getting your offer accepted. So how do you compete against a cash offer when you're having to get a loan and you have a minimal down payment? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into in today's video. The saying goes, cash is king, but that's only true when it's accompanied with a really strong offer. And with that, I'm seeing a lot of very sloppy offers being written in the current housing market that make it very easy to compete against one of these cash offers when you're having to get a loan. Out of the last 3 properties that I've sold, we've received a total of 13 offers. And of those 13 offers, 9 of them were full cash offers. But here's the thing, of those 9 cash offers, 3 of them were actually below the asking price. And on top of that, they were extremely poorly written, which means the agent that was writing those offers wasn't actually doing their job, as they were missing certain things on the contract, some things were written incorrectly, and they seemed to believe that because they were writing a cash offer, that they didn't have to do some of the normal things that you would do when writing an offer in a competitive market. On top of that, they didn't short contingencies, they didn't shorten the time frames, in addition to providing me certain documentation that my client would actually need in order to decide whether or not they wanted to move forward with that offer. And the primary reason I bring this up is because everybody thinks, hey, I'm competing against a cash offer, I have absolutely no chance of winning, and that couldn't be further from the truth. And the primary reason for that is because cash doesn't really offer any real advantage to the seller unless they need to close in a really quick time frame, which in my experience is usually not the case, because most sellers are either trying to find their replacement property, they've already got a home under contract and they're waiting to move in, so they don't really need that super quick close that cash offers out there could actually offer. So in many cases, a cash offer isn't really advantageous to the seller unless they do all of the other necessary steps that a buyer with a loan would be doing in order to help their offer stand out. So what I want to do is spend a little bit of time and talk about what you can do as a potential buyer to compete against cash offers in the Orange County housing market. But before we do that, I'd like to take a minute and ask a favor. If you find any value in my videos at all, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up. And if you want to stay updated on everything Orange County real estate related, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Not all offers are created equal, and there's this belief out there that because somebody is making a cash offer, that they somehow rise to the top when being compared to other offers. And as I said earlier, that's only true if they're also doing all of the other things that we're going to be talking about here as a potential buyer who's getting a loan. So cash by itself does not rule the world. It also needs to be accompanied by a very strong offer. But here's what I will say. It is very difficult as a buyer to compete against another buyer who isn't afraid to go really big because they've missed out on other opportunities. And the reason I bring this up is because I just had a property that I recently put under contract that was listed at $1.35 million. And on this property, we had a total of 6 offers. 4 of those 6 were actually cash. Now, 3 of them were the offers that I mentioned earlier, where they were actually below the asking price. They were sloppy in how they were written. They were missing documentation. There was just a lot of problems wrong with 3 of those offers. Now, the 4th offer was also a cash offer and written at $1.387 million. So it was $37,000 above our asking price, which is a very strong offer. They shortened contingencies. They did all of the things that they should do when making an offer. The agent was following up with me. The communication was good. It would have been an offer that I would have suggested that my client take until we had someone come in and make an offer $100,000 above the asking price, which was $63,000 above the next closest offer. And now it wasn't completely cash because they were doing a bridge loan from another property. So they didn't have the cash just sitting in the bank. They needed to bridge it based on another property. Now it was going to be an all cash transaction when it came in. It wasn't as cookie cutter and as perfect as that next offer down, but the offer was significantly higher. And on top of that, the offer was well written, the communication was good, I had a conversation with the lender that was doing the bridge loan. We felt really comfortable with it. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I said you can't compete against someone who isn't willing to lose, if you will, somebody that's willing to go big. This particular buyer has missed out on several opportunities. He's looking to sell a 2-story home and move into a single level home, which is exactly what my home is. And because he's missed out so many times, he wasn't going to miss out again. So he came in with a very, very strong offer. And as a buyer out there in the Orange County housing market, it's very, very difficult to compete against that. And the strategies that we're going to talk about today aren't coming in $100,000 above the asking price, because that could be completely crazy. But as a buyer, you need to go into writing your offer with a line in the sand, a price that you're willing to go up to, and that if your offer is not accepted, you're okay. You're okay walking away knowing that you did your best. Because what happened in this particular case is those buyers that missed out, the one that came in at 1.387 million, they called me after their offer was declined and we accepted another offer and said, hey, my client wants to restructure their offer. They're willing to come in higher than your highest offer. They're willing to pay more for that property and will close in a quicker time frame. So what that told me is that buyer didn't come in with their line in the sand. They were willing to pay more. Now, I know all buyers want to pay the least amount they can for a property, but in a competitive environment where supply is low and demand is high, in some cases you have to do some things that you don't really want to do, but you're willing to do in order to get your offer accepted. So instead of having regrets when making an offer, come in with your strongest offer first. We didn't counter any of those other offers. We just accepted the offer at 1.45 million because it was so much stronger than everything else. A lot of buyers out there believe, hey, I'm just going to make an offer and then we'll get a counter offer and then we'll come in with a stronger offer. Well, what if you don't get a counter offer? What if you don't get that opportunity to come in with another offer? Then you've completely missed the boat. So just make sure when you're making your offer, you've thought through the potential pitfalls of not making your strongest offer first, and you're completely okay with it. If you're okay walking away and it's not the right house, then so be it. But if it's the one, then you need to put yourself in the best position in order to get your offer accepted. Now, what can you do in the current environment to compete against cash offers? We're not going to talk about getting a pre-approval and all of that. You should know that you need to be pre-approved in order to buy a house. You shouldn't be out shopping for homes. You shouldn't be doing any of that unless you're pre-approved. But here's the next thing. If you've got a property to sell, if you're a move-up buyer and you've got a property that you have to liquidate, you have to sell, you need the funds from that to buy the next house, that property needs to be on the market. It needs to be an escrow so that when you're making an offer, you're not having to tell the seller like, hey, we're not on the market yet. We're coming to the market. We should sell quickly. All of that stuff. I've been in that position. It's very, very tough to sell a contingent offer when you're competing in a market with cash offers. So you need to have that contingency done. But when it comes to writing an offer, you absolutely have to consider things that cash offers offer. Things like waiving the appraisal, waiving the loan contingency. Now, I realize that's a touchy subject for some people out there. I don't think any buyer should go in and waive all of their contingencies because you could be setting yourself up for failure. But you also have to put yourself in the best position possible to compete against that cash offer. So typically a cash offer has no appraisal attached. It also has no loan attached. So if you're a buyer getting a loan, you can also waive the appraisal, assuming you think it's going to come in at value. And you can also waive the loan. Just make sure that the lender has done all of their due diligence. They've looked at all your paperwork. They've dotted the I's. They've crossed the T's. They've told you, hey, you're good to go. You know, that you have solid employment. You have solid money in the bank, that there's no issues there. In fact, that's a conversation you need to have with your lender. Am I in a position to waive my loan contingency in order to be competitive? Because if I'm being honest, that's the only real advantage that a cash offer offers outside of a really quick close in some cases, is that the loan and the appraisal are both waived. So once you've waived those contingencies, you're somewhat on an equal playing field when it comes to your offer. Now, there are some additional things you can do to increase the strength of your offer. One thing is you can come in with a higher earnest money deposit. Typically in California, most sellers, most listing agents want to see 3% of the purchase price going into escrow in order to solidify that contract. So if you're buying $1 million house, that's $30,000 that needs to go into escrow. But as a potential buyer, if you're putting 20% down to buy that $1 million house, that's $200,000. So you're going to have to bring $200,000 into escrow in order to close on that property anyway. So why not offer a higher earnest money deposit up front? Maybe instead of $30,000, you offer $50,000, $75,000, even $100,000. Now understand, you are putting some of that money at risk by offering a higher deposit, but only in the case that you release your contingencies on that purchase. As long as you have contingencies in place, your earnest money deposit isn't at risk. And assuming you signed the arbitration agreement in the contract, the most the seller can really take from you is 3% of that earnest money deposit. But again, it doesn't mean that money can't get tied up in escrow. But if you want to help your offer stand out, that's one of the things you can do is come in with that higher earnest money deposit. Because what I'll say is sellers see that and they think, wow, this buyer must be more qualified. They must want the property more because they're willing to do this. On top of that, shortening contingencies really helps your offer stand out. The way the contract's written in the state of California is that you have 17 days to release your contingencies. Now, assuming we've waived the loan and waived the appraisal, you still have the home inspection contingency, you still have the seller disclosure contingency. If it's in an HOA, you have the HOA contingency. Reviewing the title report, that's also a contingency. So what you can do in order to help your offer stand out, instead of 17 days, is maybe you shorten those. Maybe you take them down to 10, or maybe even 7 days, like my most recent offer did, in order to help them stand out against the competition. The next closest offer did lower their contingencies, but not all the way down to 7 days. In fact, a few of the cash offers that came in that were below the asking price still kept the contingency all the way in place, all the way to day 17, which when I looked at that, I go, well, how is this offer even competitive? They didn't shorten the time frame. They didn't shorten the contingencies. What's the real advantage to the seller in this situation when it's competing against an offer that's not only coming in with a higher purchase price, they're shortening the contingencies, they're showing me that they really, really want the property. On top of that, the communication was much better from the agent on that side than it was from some of those cash offers, which in my eyes as a listing agent is a huge advantage. I want somebody that's communicating on the other side. I want somebody that shows they want that property, because that tells me that if something small comes up, it's probably not going to be an issue. And because they offered so much more than the asking price and the next highest offer, we have more room to negotiate if something does actually happen with this deal when compared to the other deals. And it's still going to net the seller more money. And one of the last things I'll talk about is doing some sort of lease back to the seller. There's a lot of situations at the moment where the seller needs to move. Maybe they're moving out of state. Maybe they're buying new construction. Maybe they're moving across town. And there's just a gap in when they're planning on closing and when they need to move into that new property. You can offer the seller some sort of lease back at a minimal amount. You can offer it free. You can do things in order to help your offer stand out, whereas the cash offer might not be doing some of those things. In fact, some of the feedback I got when I told some of those cash offers that their offer wasn't accepted, that we went with another offer, they seemed surprised. They were like, well, our offer was cash. And I said, yeah, but your offer wasn't competitive. Just understand, as a buyer out there getting a loan, you can compete against the cash offer. You should not be scared of cash offers, but you have to do the things that we talked about in today's video in order to stand out. Now, there's two last things I want to touch on in today's video that will help you in competing against a cash offer. The very first one is make sure you're working with a professional real estate agent, somebody that has experience, somebody that understands the current market, that can walk you through all the things that we talked about today. Now, if you're in the Orange County housing market or you're local and you need representation, I would love to be the person who helps guide you through that process. I would love to take it from A to Z and help you accomplish that goal of home ownership. So if I can be of any assistance to you, my contact information is listed below. But on top of that, have your agent reach out to the selling agent and see if the seller is willing to look at letters from buyers. If the seller is willing to read a letter from a buyer, if they're willing to take a look at those, you should write a letter. Not talking about your race or how many kids you have or anything like that, but talking about what you love about the property, talking about what they've done to the property that you've fallen in love with. Because this really simple touch can actually help your offer stand out in a big way when competing against other offers.